Let's go. All right. It is a great Wednesday afternoon, and I am your man with the plan. We got a lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of stuff to cover, so let's get right into it. Before we start, we got one thing to cover. Breaking news came out yesterday. Rob Gronkowski got traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is out of retirement. Gronk will go with as long with a 7th-round pick, and the Patriots will get a 4th-rounder in return. Now, if Gronk can come back to even a shell of what he was, the Buccaneers will be unstoppable on offense. You now have Bruce Arians. He's an offensive mind powerhouse, paired with Tom Brady, who is ready to prove to the world that he can win without Bill Belichick. You give Tom Brady weapons like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who both had 1,000 yards last year, and you don't forget about O.J. Howard. Unless he gets traded somewhere, I feel like he's going to get dealt. They can't keep those two prime tight ends on the roster. Now you have a QB, Tom Brady. Undeniably the greatest quarterback of all time. His now have playoff experience, Super Bowl experience, 20 years worth of that. Tampa Bay's been dying for this for years. And now you remove Jameis Winston, who threw 30 interceptions last year, and he just makes better decisions. Tampa Bay went 7-9 last year, and they had a total of 6 one-loss games, and 4 of them were to playoff teams, and the Saints, Seahawks, Titans, and Texans. Winston threw 8 picks in those games. It doesn't sound that bad, but some of those are game-ending picks, or when Winston threw 5 interceptions against the Houston Texans. Winston basically gave them a Christmas gift. And now you take a race with some of those mistakes, and the Buccaneers are a playoff team, and now you put Tom Brady in there. They should be really fun to watch and should be a Super Bowl contender for a couple years until Brady decides to call it quits. Now, let's shift to this. The NFL Draft begins on Thursday. It's an opportunity for sports fans to have some hope again and forget about what's going on in the world for a weekend and have something to talk about. The draft is loaded. It's got future talent like Tua Tagovailoa, who looks like Drew Brees in Alabama, Justin Herbert, who can make plays with a split second, and Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, or the all-defense position Isaiah Simmons, who can literally play anywhere if you ask him to. It'll be the first major sports event the world will watch in at least a month and a half, and it feels great to see where everyone's ended up. There's some hope. Also, The Last Dance, incredible to watch. Michael Jordan is an absolute beast, underappreciated in this time, and there should not be a discussion. I know LeBron is great, but he's our generation's Michael Jordan, but he's nowhere close to what he was. There's some stories about the owner, the GM, Krause, and Pippen, and Jordan as a competitor is very eye-opening. It reminds me of what we saw with the Patriots struggling to keep it all together. I'd love to see a documentary like that. Now, this show's going to be broken down into 3 sections. We're going to have a what if, we're going to have a hypothetical scenario where we're going to break down something that you ask of me, and then we're going to go to a main topic, our breakdown, which we're breaking down the AFC East today. And then we're going to go into a topic, Man on Fire or Man on Ice, depending on what happens. I will give you a hot take, or I will be accountable for a potential cold take. Now let's get started with our what if. Now, Clemson football and Notre Dame are emerging as a whole. Notre Dame's been to a national championship in 2012, and they reached the semifinals in 2018. They lost to Clemson, and they got absolutely destroyed. Clemson football has kind of built a dynasty in a little small town in South Carolina as they come off a season where they went to the national championship for the 2nd year in a row with Trevor Lawrence, and they lost 42-25 to the absolute dream season LSU had with Joe Burrow in New Orleans. Now, a very common talking point that Clemson had last year is that they didn't have anybody on their schedule to really match up against the other great teams. They had a scare against North Carolina where they barely got out of there. The skin of their teeth, 2-point conversion. Clemson had to go undefeated, basically, to make the playoffs and have a shot at this. Now, next year, Clemson's toughest opponent is going to be Notre Dame, where Dabo and his junior quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, will have to go into Notre Dame and beat them. Now, let's say that Clemson loses to Notre Dame, and they go 12-1 and they win the conference title against, let's say, UNC again. Now, how does that work out with the rest of the college football playoff? There's a lot to be answered here and broken down. Now, there's a lot of this happens, so this will happen. So let me take you to 2 seasons, 2017, when Alabama lost to Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And there was a big question of who should get in, Alabama or Ohio State. Now, Ohio State was 11-2 and Alabama was 12-1, but Ohio State had a conference championship. But they had the weak loss to Iowa, where they came in and they got absolutely battered and thrown around, and they did not look like they deserved the 4th spot. And Alabama played with Auburn that game, and then Auburn ended up losing to Georgia, which kind of unvalidated loss. It was not good. So let's say Clemson loses to Notre Dame in a really close game, but Notre Dame really isn't that good and they don't make the playoffs. Clemson's out. Let's say that Notre Dame is another team like they were in 2018. They go 13-0 and they have a playoff spot. Then I can see Clemson getting in only if there isn't a situation like where Alabama is just sitting there and there's like a Georgia that's 13-0, ready to make a playoff run, and Alabama's 12-1 with a lot of quality wins. Not LSU. Not happening. Notre Dame has to be a playoff team. That is the basic, essential thing you need to think about if Clemson needs to make the playoff. It's not looking good, though, if they lose in a blowout or Notre Dame's 6-6 and they're barely making a bowl game. Clemson's end can run, but there's a lot of things that need to be in play. Alabama would need to be the SEC champion, and there would need to be nobody in there for questioning. There wouldn't need to be a Georgia or an LSU or an Auburn hanging around there that would have a case against Clemson with a better strength of record, a better strength of schedule. FPI just bites Clemson. It could be a lot of things. Now, Clemson, they've had a magical run. They've gone through. Deshaun Watson went to 2 national championships, won one, lost one. Shoulda, coulda, would on that. Kelly Bryant takes them to the semifinal. And now they have Trevor Lawrence, and he lost his first game, and it did not look good. Many people are questioning if he's the right quarterback, if Clemson just got lucky in the last game. A lot of questions will be answered, but it's tough to see right now as a lot of camps and stuff are closed. So we'll be able to find out in the fall what Clemson's really made of. Are they going on a revenge tour, or are they destined to lose to Notre Dame and probably end the magical run that they've been on? Okay, let's shift to this. Free agency this year has not only provided fans something to watch and look forward to during this unusual offseason, but will change the landscape of the NFL for the foreseeable future. Tom Brady has signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and is beginning a new chapter in his NFL career, and many are left to wonder many things about the Patriots moving forward and what the NFL is going to look like. The NFC clearly is the stronger conference right now, and there hasn't been a division winner in the AFC East in the last 20 years. It has not been the Patriots consistently. Now, let's break down the first team, the last place team, Miami Dolphins. They added a lot, and they had a lot of momentum actually going into next year. They were 5-11, but they did go 5-4 in their last 9 games, beating playoff teams like New England and Philadelphia. Then they went and added some players from their own division. They added Kyle Van Noy. They added Landon Roberts. They added Shaq Lawson. Then they went out and got Byron Jones, who was arguably the best corner in the draft and one of the bigger surprise moves in free agency. And they picked someone like Eric Flowers to boost the line on each side of the ball. In a more balanced AFC East, Miami will make this leap that many are predicting. Miami still has a lot of issues, though, to work out in the offensive line and still needs a solid answer at QB. They can't roll with Josh Rosen or Ryan Fitzpatrick. They are in the perfect spot to land Tua, or they can clear house on their draft capital and go take Joe Burrow. Now, there have been some rumors going around what Burrow would look like in Miami, but let's not focus on that. Let's just say Miami drafts Tua because they believe he's the guy, and they let Fitzpatrick take over until Tua's ready to start. I believe Miami goes 6-10 at the worst and 8-8 best. I think they're improving, and they could be a dark horse team in this division, but there's teams like Buffalo who have done all the right things this offseason, and New England's still the top dog in the division. You got to beat them to be the man. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami made a playoff run, though. With the 7 teams that are in the playoffs now, they could sneak in at 8-8 or 7-9. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, let's look at the New York Jets. New York went 7-9 last year and had a similar path to what Miami went through. They struggled out of the gate early, but that was partially due to Sam Darnold having a mono for the first chunk of the season. The Jets started off 1-7, and then they went 7-9 in a year. That's a huge improvement for a franchise looking to go in the right direction. And Darnold was there. If he had played all 16 games, many argue he would have made the playoffs. The Jets needed to address their biggest issue, which was the offensive line. But they did it, and they did. They made a lot of safe signings and a lot of players who haven't played a full 16-game season. Some kids going out of the CFL. They re-signed some of their own guys. But their biggest loss of the year was Robbie Anderson. And now they sign a guy like Rashard Perriman, who's had a 50 targets, which was the highest of his career, but it's not really replacing what was the best receiver of the Jets for the last 4 years. New York needs help on the defense. They're on the bottom of the league in sacks, and they gave up the most sacks in the league. They need help on both sides of the ball. New York fans have endured this for a long time, but I feel like it's going to happen again. The cycle's going to continue. Le'Veon Bell didn't even post 1,000 yards rushing or 500 yards receiving. He was all over the place. And that could be in part to Sam Darnold not being able to be there for the first part of the season, get that chemistry. We'll find out. But Pittsburgh did not pick them up for a reason. There's something to that. And now they're having to pay him $11 million a year, and his production is more than likely to go down. And now you have a bunch of B-plus average wide receivers just sitting there, and Darnold's got no line to protect him. It's not looking good on the offensive side. Darnold's talented, and they'll win games, but not as much as they want to. Not with Adam Gase at the head coach. They need to do more, but only time will tell. Maybe they draft someone like CeeDee Lamb, or they draft an offensive line like Andrew Thomas from Georgia. They've got a lot of options at number 8, but we'll figure that out. The most improved division in this last year was Buffalo. They went 10-6, and they were headed to the divisional round, what it looked like, up 19-0 in the playoffs, but then Deshaun Watson pulled the most magical plays I've ever seen before. And despite what the disappointing playoff was, it was a huge year for Buffalo. They competed. Josh Allen improved. This is what they needed. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions, which was a huge jump. He threw for 1,000 more yards, 10 more touchdowns, and he threw 3 less interceptions. So he took care of the ball, and he did some work on the ground too. Buffalo had a lot going for them. They were able to compete with the Patriots, which is something they can't say every year. They went into Foxborough, had them by the throat, but just Tom Brady pulled some excellent magic in the end in one of his final games as a Patriot. The Bills made a lot of low-risk moves. They're trying to maintain the roster, signing players like Josh Norman, who, if he returns to his 2015 All-Pro campaign in a prove-it deal, then Buffalo will have a strong secondary, along with Tre'Davious White and Jordan Poyer. And they made one of the biggest trades of the offseason, signing Pro Bowl wide receiver Stephon Diggs, who brings in playoff experience from the Vikings and will be another deep threat that will further help Josh Allen in his development. Now, the only downside of this trade is they can't cover some of these extra weaknesses. They can't build on more offensive power on the line. But if Stephon Diggs proves out to be worth four draft picks, I mean, the sky's the limit for that offense. Buffalo was also able to maintain the core roster they had. This is why they made these low-risk free agency moves. This will be able to complement McDermott's offense, as they'll be able to keep going and use Devin Singletary, who had an excellent rookie year running the football. And the most obvious thing for Buffalo that was huge for them is that Tom Brady left. He's gone. And that divorce in New England might have been the best thing for them. They haven't won a division since 1995. Can they put back-to-back winning seasons together? I don't know. They haven't done that since Jim Kelly took off in 1995. We're really going to see if the Bills are ready to step up to the plate. There's no longer an excuse. There's no longer the Patriots went 13-3 again this year, and they destroyed us both times, and we couldn't do anything about it. There's no more excuses. If Buffalo's going to improve, next year's going to be it, or it's back to the drawing board for them. Now, last but not least, everybody's favorite villain in the Patriots. New England has absolutely dominated this division for the last decade, winning every single year and winning 18 times out of 20. It is absolutely insane how many times they've won this division and how easily they've done it. And they went 12-4. It seems like another successful year looking out, but they lost in the wild card round to the Titans and Derrick Henry. That would end up being the Cinderella team that just surprised everybody. Brady then decided it was time to move on. He made his choice and ended this 20-year run as he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and turned the NFL on its head. Now, the Patriots enter free agency under the most uncertain times in this organization, but they do have a quarterback, a fourth-rounder named Jarrett Stidham from Auburn, who, as the defense quotes, Stephon Gilmore and Devin McCourty seem very confident in what he could do at practice, but it's different to see in games. The only game tape we have that isn't the preseason is him getting picked off by Jamal Adams and Jamal Adams taking that to the end zone. But that doesn't mean they're still out of it. They will always have a great defense with Bill Belichick and maybe even maintain the same defense from last year if they still have the Defensive Player of the Year in Stephon Gilmore. They retained people like Matthew Slater, who was an excellent leader for the team and special teams MVP for their team. You've got people like the McCourties who are coming back after excellent seasons, and for very cheap, might I add. Despite them losing leadership like Kyle Van Noy, Landon Roberts, and Jamie Collins, I think New England will be fine on defense. They always find ways to make it work, and they make these head-scratching moves, but you always see them turn it around in January and hoisting a Lombardi trophy half the time. So they also were able to keep all-pro guard Joe Thuney for another season, at least to protect Jarrett Stidham and see if this is the guy to replace Tom Brady. There's always the draft where they could get players like Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Tua if they want to trade down. They have that fourth-round pick now because of Gronkowski. I just don't see that being the case. Belichick is probably sticking with Jarrett Stidham, why he signed Brian Hoyer to kind of be that mentor that Brady was last year. We don't know if Brady was going to mentor. It might not be in his head. Who knows? Now, New England's going to have to play a completely different style of football. They're going to have to run the ball with Sony Michel and let Jarrett Stidham develop across the year. They're not going to be able to come out guns blazing like they used to. They've got an Edelman who's 32 and banged up last year. N'Keal Harry looked decent, but nothing promising. Mohamed Sanu's coming off ankle surgery. Jacoby Myers is a big question mark. They don't have a tight end. They just lost their tight end to the Buccaneers. So New England's got a lot of questions to answer, but it seems Belichick's always passing anything people test him with. So if they're going to win like Belichick wants to. Good defense and a decent offense. Now, the NFL draft is in 2 days, and it's time I introduce Man on Fire. It is my hot take topic, and I love it. We're going to have myself be held accountable for anything I might mess up. Who knows? I could be wrong. Now, let me tell you something. There are going to be a lot of trades. I'm predicting there are going to be 4 major first-round trades, and some player, franchise-type player, is going to get shipped out. Someone like Odell Beckham. The Cleveland Browns have been throwing around a couple rumors that Odell Beckham could be on the way out for the Cleveland Browns, as Mayfield and him haven't been able to really mesh like they hoped. I believe that Miami will use their draft capital to move up for Joe Burrow. And this owner has come out and said that he prefers Joe Burrow over Tua, but the owner usually tunes into a couple games a year, maybe saw the playoffs and was like, okay, 7 touchdowns against Oklahoma, I want that guy. San Diego signed Chris Harris Jr. despite having Casey Hayward, Desmond King, and Trevor Williams, who is set to come back in injury and return to form. Hayward is one of the elite slot corners, and this is actually where Chris Harris Jr. plays. This is who they traded for. This could set up a trade for Detroit, who's been in many mock drafts taking Jeff Okudah. They desperately need a corner after getting Darius Slay and him choosing to go to the Eagles in free agency. Let's say the Chargers move up. They trade away Casey Hayward or Chris Harris Jr., that slot corner. Chris Harris can play anywhere, but slot corner is usually where he plays. And then you have Chargers who have been really in love with just Justin Herbert guy. They pick him at 3. Detroit moves down, gets their corner, and still is able to pick someone like Derek Brown, who will solidify that defense instantly. It'll plug up a lot of running, which they've been struggling with, especially with Dalvin Cook in that division. The Detroit Lions could make this move, but we'll see. And then you've got someone like Leonard Fournette, who's been depressed all year, that the Jacksonville Jaguars have been cleaning house and removing all of his best friends out of there. He's been posting things on Instagram, and after he said to social media he wants Cam Newton, Jacksonville put him on the trade block. So Jacksonville gets more draft capital, and someone gets a solid running back for a couple more years. I can see it. That one's not as likely, but there's definitely going to be some movement in this draft. A lot of people need a lot of different things and move up. New England could move up, especially with their 4th rounder. They could pair one with a 1st rounder and get someone like Herbert or Tua. It just seems that we'll find out what teams are willing to do and willing not to do on this Zoom kind of NFL draft. Now, let me leave you with this. If we thought that we'd be in this position at least a month or 2 ago, that the NFL draft would be the event of the spring and perhaps the summer, I would have told you were crazy. What about March Madness, the NBA playoffs, MLB opening weekend, NHL? Anyone? This is the draft, and the biggest one of all time. It's looking to show sports fans who just kind of tune in and don't really dig into it, about to show what it's all about. It's an event of hope. It's an event where all 32 teams feel like they're on equal playing fields because they got the guy. They got their person. It'll be a draft action-packed weekend with a lot of twists and turns, and I'm excited for it. I'll be here all the way, and we'll break it down next week. I'm Grayson Mann. I hope you guys have a great week and enjoy the draft. We'll break it down, the losers, the winners, and we'll dedicate an entire episode to it. I hope you guys all stay safe, and this was your man with a plan.